Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. We're back for our usual live stream spot on Wednesday. I've got my buddy Earl Maneein with us here today. If you guys don't know, I did a sort of an off schedule live stream on Monday with the bass player from my band who happens to be an attorney. And we did a whole hour-long discussion on musical contracts and getting an attorney, a guy who's an attorney and a band leader, getting his vision on like what should be in your contract, what should not be in your contract. It was really good. I've been doing this a long time and I learned a ton in that interview with him. So if you go to our YouTube or our Facebook channel, you can find that interview with Tyler Benson where we talk about musical contracts. Totally worth an hour of your time. Very much. Anyway, I'm glad you guys are here today because we're talking with my buddy Earl Maneein, the most brutal heavy metal violinist alive. And we're going to be talking about his new projects. He has 2 new projects out, and we're going to be talking about both of those. Ironically, neither one of those have an amplified violin in them, but they're so badass that we thought you guys should know about them. So, with no more doo-doo, here's Earl Maneein.
Yo, what up, Matt? Hey, everybody.
So yeah,
it's true. The irony is that there's no electric stuff in either of these 2 albums.
They're not even 5 strings.
No, it's weird. And as you know, I definitely roll with a 7-string violin a lot. It's
yeah, Earl's like the 7-string Jordan guy, and like the chugging. You know, what most of us have to do if we're trying to do a we do the little wimpy ricochet bow thing. Earl's not about it. He does the actual chugging the same way a guitar player would with a pick, and we may get to that later and have you teach a little lesson on that. But the Earl has been a classically trained violinist and a metalhead since he was this tall. And
I'm still that tall.
You and I were the same height at one point.
When you were like 4 and I was like, 46.
Yeah, when I was 4, you hadn't been born yet. But so we actually have two projects to talk about. I want to talk about the one. I don't know, which one do you want to talk about first, Rachel, or do you want to talk about Seven Sons?
I guess since we were talking off air about Seven Sons, we might as well not continue the conversation because then we're kind of shoving everybody in the middle, and that's sort of like like Donnie in The Big Lebowski. You come in, you wander into the middle of the conversation, you don't know what's happening, you're like a child. Anyway,
let's tell so tell them about your group Seven Sons. What is that group?
So Seven Sons is a string quartet, and Haydn, Franz Joseph Haydn lineup, height of 18th century technology, 2 violins, viola, cello. The only thing is that we play music that's generally rooted in hardcore punk and heavy metal. And it's me that does the bulk of the writing for the group. And we do a combination of stuff I write and arrangements of sort of extreme music bands, and explore that kind of like we explore that area of music that actually I think is kind of underserved. Is that the right word? I guess so. It's underserved. Nobody's really doing it. Underrepresented. That's right. It's underrepresented. I don't know if it's underrepresented because nobody really wants to do it. But I'm it. We're it. Me, my wife Jenny, Feng Chern Hui, and Ada Cridler.
And you guys, I really wanted to share some of the videos that you guys do. The problem is that the algorithm will kick us off the air if we do that. So we will tell people where to find when we're done with this broadcast. If people want to go see some Seven Sons videos, all that stuff's on YouTube, right?
It's all on YouTube. Yeah, we have our first actual music video out for the song Prancer, which is an arrangement of a Dillinger Escape Plan album, which is this album. So the album that is just out is called One of Us is the Killer. and it's named after the album of the same name by the band, the Dillinger Escape Plan. And the Dillinger Escape Plan is highly influential. I the name the genre is called mathcore, which is a little sort of silly. I think all the names are kind of silly, but I'm just going to go along with what how best to describe it for the widest possible audience. They are a pioneering mathcore band, mostly known for writing incredible tunes and incredibly technical, but not technical for the sake of technical music that sort of really inspires just anxiety and terror and panic. And they play all this incredibly complex stuff while literally chucking amplifiers into the audience, or sort of like jumping off of balconies, and really at great expense. They don't really hold back. They've I think every member of the band has broken several, but I know Ben has broken a whole bunch of C numbers. And his femur, actually, which is kind of hard to break.
You got to
But
go out of your way to break your femur.
yeah, so he's broken his femur, he's broken his collarbone, he's broken a bunch of C's, but he's still around, and he now plays in Suicidal Tendencies, which is a different punk band. But yeah, so Dillinger Escape Plan had an album in 2013 called One of Us is the Killer, and we, for the 10-year anniversary, Seven Sons, I arranged, me and Chernhui together, I did about 70% of it, and he did 30% of it, reimagined the whole album for string quartet, and the result is this album that just came out.
So I think a lot of times when we, like you and I and Rachel and some other folks, are in a text thread that we talk a lot of stuff, and Rachel Barton Pine is also a well-known classical violinist and metalhead. And kind of the consensus, like, metal is classical. I mean, the line between metal and classical is super blurry. In fact, if you looked at the trajectory of the history of classical music and you arrive at modern metal, that's not any surprise to anybody who understands the arc of that history, right?
I think it's so close. It's really close, and it's a matter of, I mean, oversimplified, I think it's a matter of really class and instruments. But and maybe metal has, extreme music has a slightly less of a wide of an emotional color palette, because classical music can be delicate and beautiful and soothing, and like all, like, while metal generally is dealing with panic, fear, anger, hatred, all of the sort of negative emotional affects. I think with classical music there is a wider palette, but metal and classical music have that super that ability to go super intense more than a lot of other musics, in my opinion. And also metal has definitely mined from the classical rep in terms of how songs are created, harmonic structure of a lot of tunes. There's definitely a lot of consanguinity. That's a big word. Pull that one out.
Yeah.
Consanguinity there. I like that. I'm going to say that all day now.
It's a good one. It's a good word.
Consanguinity. That's right.
Well, when you look at like the time signature sort of work that is done in modern metal, like how complex rhythmically it is, it tends to be much more complex rhythmically than what we would know as classical music. And then times, harmonically, it's pushing a lot of boundaries there too. I mean, it acknowledges that the whole Schoenberg movement, all that stuff happened, and I think those influences are still to be heard in modern metal music, right?
For sure. I think there's definitely you have. I'm not sure that, like, if you ask a standard, like a metal head dude on the street about the second Viennese school, I don't think they'll be able to necessarily answer you, but it's definitely a running thread. Actually, there's a band out of Massachusetts called The Red Chord, from that Berg, Wozzeck opera. So I think there's definitely more consanguinity there. I said it again, but yeah, there's a lot of cross there, and the two threads you have, like, in a way, the thing that I'm thinking of most right off the bat is that you have kind of like the Iron Maiden power metal kind of stuff, which is super Vivaldi
Mhm.
esque, right? Like very, very circle of fifths, kind of like a Fortspiegelung, like five of, going through the harmonic cycle, dominant, tonic kind of a thing. And you have that present in Iron Maiden and Vivaldi, but then you have super dissonant and super, like you said, odd time signatured things, like, you know, Webern and Schnittke, which is not the same thing, but like Schnittke, Shostakovich, Stravinsky, more modern-ish kinds of music. And maybe it's not necessarily one is of the other, but I think more of a worldwide kind of ingestion or interpolation of how, like how turbulent our society is, and kind of like a reflection of it, What happened?
I don't know. I was waiting for you to finish your thought.
No, I didn't know. I was it. Just that
Yeah.
it's kind of like a thing for, I think it's like it reflects where our society is. I think how turbulent and how crazy, and in a way, it's seemingly very negative. Like there's a lot going on. I mean, like I don't think we even really need to talk about it.
Right.
It's just it's just terrible. A lot.
Well,
And
one
I
of the
think that's
things, when you listen to producers talk, and I listen to a lot of Rick Rubin stuff, and one of the things he talks about is when people send him demos nowadays, the problem with all this technology, according to Rick Rubin, is that people can make these really slickly produced demos, and that slick production can distract you from the fact that a lot of these songs are just terrible songs. He said, so if you send me an acoustic guitar and a vocal and it's a good song, I can tell that it's a great song and maybe we can go a direction with this. And where I'm headed with this is that your ability to really reimagine the Dillinger Escape stuff in a completely different genre, without the drums, without the distortion, without the screaming vocals, it's proof that those are just amazing songs because they can withstand being twisted and pulled in a very different direction, and they still communicate the same thing they were trying to communicate before. Does that make sense?
absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. I think I've, and not just because I'm a fan, but I really it does underscore how brilliant Ben is. Ben Weinman, the guitarist and really the founder of the Dillinger Escape Plan. Along with the whole band, really, but Ben as the primary songwriter, it kind of underscores how well the guy really knows how to write music and write a song. Maybe not like a song that people want to get married to necessarily, but
Depends on your
I've,
marriage.
I've seen weirder things. I saw this Japanese couple get married. It went viral, and they like had their whole wedding rep was a whole bunch of Converge songs, which I found hilarious. But yeah, so maybe I take that back. Maybe I take that back. But
So for all the new people joining us, we've got Earl Maneein with us here today. He's got a couple projects we're going to talk about that he's making me feel like a real underachiever this year. But the one project is with his string quartet, the acoustic unplugged standard old school string quartet, reimagine an entire metal album, and it's amazing. We would play it for you, but the algorithm would punt us to infinity. So you can find it on your own time. Highly recommend finding Seven Sons, and the album's called One of Us is the Killer. Go find that. But he's gonna give a little behind the scenes stuff, and then we're gonna talk about one of his other projects too. But yeah, why don't you talk about a little bit of the process of saying I'm going to take this fully produced metal album, and what made you think you could even do this with a string quartet?
So this is actually all Ben's fault. So what happened was we Seven Sons already collaborated with Dillinger Escape Plan. We already have a long-standing friendship and collaboration. How it started was I had arranged a very well-known song of theirs called 43% Burnt. And it's a song, they end a lot of shows with that song. And when every time they play 43%, there is no safe space in the venue. The whole place just like I've been several more than several Dillinger shows, and I'll say that's the point where it actually gets dangerous. There is no you're even by like the walls, forget it. There's people like kicking off the walls, like trying to like, kind of like get in there, So there's that's it. It's just one big catharsis, you know. I had covered it for Seven Sons, and I had put this video up. I had filmed it, like with my phone, and it was not meant to be anything. It was there was like pink balloons all along the side of my apartment because it was my daughter's like second birthday, something like that, like the day before, and I just didn't take them down, and like like whatever. And it was like totally like we didn't think about, how like people make videos and they really think about it. They're like, oh, I got to get this right. And how's the lighting and like whatever. Like we did none of this. So we just put this video out of 43. And then I get Ben Weinman slid into my DMs and he was like, I see you're playing a show in 3 days at, LPR at La Poisson Rouge. Can I come? And I'm like, hey, wow, sure. Does, I don't know. Does a bear poop in the woods? Whatever, So he came down, him and Billy, the drummer, came down. And from there, it kind of went forward. He was like, can we jam? All that stuff. And then we ended up on their very last album, on Dissociation, which came out in 2016. So Seven Sons did all the string stuff on that album. And then Ben called me in April of 2020. And, the height of the, when everybody was just in their houses, and he was like, how's your pandemic doing? How's, I'm like, how's your pandemic? So that was another conversation. And I had said that, obviously all jobs ended. Like I'm not, my mortgages, the bills coming, but do you remember those days? Of course you do, right? Like,
yeah,
dude, it was horrifying. Like they said, oh, well, apply for a mortgage stop. Right. And like, that's what, remember there was a thing where Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or whatever, it was like, you could apply for a mortgage stop, but like, for 6 months. And then at the end of the 6-month moratorium, it's not like you can start paying with interest or whatever. Right. You were responsible for all of it at the end of the 6 months, which is like so useless. It was like, oh, well, should I just like, bleed slowly, or do I just like do this like right now? Cause like, that's all whatever. What am I going to do? So everybody was worried. And me and Ben were talking about this, and he was like, well, I got a weird idea. The funny thing is that his idea absolutely did not turn out how he intended, or how we, so he was just like, I have a weird idea. The 10-year anniversary of, One of Us Is the Killer is coming up, and I'm already talking with Sumerian Records about re-releasing this. And like, I'm pretty certain I can get you money to like just arrange this whole thing for Seven Sons, and that'll be sides 3 and 4. Like, so if they remaster One of Us for sides A and B, 1 and 2, sides 1 and 2 on a double album, and then we'll just put the Seven Sons version on, 3 and 4, and we release it as a sort of like a quadruple album. How awesome is this? And I was like, that's great. And so he, we negotiated a fee. I got to work. I thought I had deadlines. We were working the whole thing, and then Sumerian, well, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but it just didn't turn out the way we thought it was going to turn out. And then, Ben negotiated a kill fee. Everything actually ended up working out kind of great. and then we released it on our own. So that's the story of this album. It would never have happened unless except for Ben calling me and saying, hey, you're not doing anything with your pandemic. Why don't you reimagine a whole bunch of incredibly weird, horrifically difficult songs for your string quartet? And me being a sucker going, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. That's how I'm going to spend my time. I'll watch the Bake Off and then I'll listen to this like horrifying music for like hours and then sit at my computer and just try to figure it out.
We do have somebody here who remembers you from the Vitamin String Quartet. That's another string quartet that Earl's sometimes part of. A little different vibe than Seven Sons.
Very like 180. Actually, yes, 180. So it's funny because, so for people who don't know, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about Vitamin String Quartet. Yes, I am in the Vitamin String Quartet, but the quartet is kind of not the right word. It's more of like a collective, because what we are a bunch of string players, mostly based in LA, even though I'm in New York City. And we are all, we're all members, but it's not, the group isn't contingent on me being me, if that makes any sense. We're like a K-pop band. We're like a crappy, not famous K-pop band. It's more the identity of Vitamin String Quartet that is like the thing. And I may be at the show, I may be on the recording. I'm probably not. And sometimes I am. Yes, that's me. But it's also who I am is actually not important in terms of that thing, because it's a product and it's kind of like which is great, but it's not Seven Sons, which is intentionally living in the hardcore ethic, which is absolutely not like VSQ at all.
Yeah, she says she loves Tool and A Perfect Circle, so that's what brought her to there. And you actually did the Tool arrangement for Vitamin String Quartet, right?
I didn't do the Tool. That wasn't my. I have arranged for Vitamin String Quartet, but that is me on the playing on. There's like the video of 46 and 2 on YouTube. That is me. I might even be wearing the same shirt.
I know Nick Hyde and Danny Lane and Rob Flax are all here too. What's up, everybody?
What's up, guys?
Good to see everybody. So, yes. So I think I remember you hitting up sort of the group of us who talk a lot. And there was one of those tunes that you're like, I don't even know like how to count a couple of these measures. Let me ask the drummer. And he's like, hell, I don't know. I just play it.
That's the funny thing, right? Like, it's not like he's making it up every time. It's consistent. It's the same thing, but it's all in the body. So like, it went so fast. It was like, I couldn't tell whether this particular thing was in 5/8 or 6/8, because it was like one of these, very Dillinger-y kind of like glitches. It was like, it's like really like spastic. And even though I have slowdown technology, it would, the bits weren't, when you slowed it down too much, it became unintelligible because it got too pixelated. That's not really the right word, but I think everybody knows what I mean. Right. So like pixelated. Pixelated. So I was hanging out with Billy one time and I was like, yo, so when I lost my bet, what is this, dude? Like, is it 5 or is it 6? And he just looked at me like for like maybe 3 seconds of silence. He was just like, how about I just play it for you? And then he played it. So this is even the more hilarious thing. He sat down at the drum set and then he started playing it slow. And then he was like, wait, oh God, I can't play it slow. Like he's never had to play it like slow ever. Like it's always like this, like, so So when he had to kind of like turn, of course he managed it. He's a very, very intelligent dude. I don't want to give the wrong impression to people. It's not like this guy doesn't know what he's doing, but in this context, it was hilarious because he's so used to just turning it on and going
Right.
that when like his friend is asking him like, so what is this really? It took him a second. Like it took him a little while for him to like work out, okay, the left hand goes here and then my foot, it's this and then this. Like, to tell me. And to be fair, I've actually I've definitely been called out in that sort of same way also, where somebody has asked me what is this lick? What are you doing? And then I go to explain and then I find myself absolutely not understanding what
Right.
I wrote. And I'm like, who wrote this? What idiot wrote? Shh.
I don't know. My fingers just do it.
That's right. Oh no, I just do things.
But, you don't have to practice things that aren't giving you trouble.
Right. So and when it's you that does it, like you that made it up. Like it's funny. I was actually talking about this in terms of like with a radio interview I had with Rachel about, she was saying how difficult the concerto is, and it is. It's super difficult. I can't play it. She can. I can't. But a lot of the stuff that I wrote was kind of like transcribed improvisations in a way. Like I would pick up the violin, I would like play a bunch of stuff, and then I would like write it down in Sibelius. And the funny thing is that like the things that you do, that you pull out like in an improv, are way harder than when you like look at it on the page again and you're like, wow, what is this? I don't even know what that is. So,
Yeah, I mean, with my writing process, I find there's certain things I'm like, I want to do this thing, and then I will like sort of mathematically work out that thing. And then there's other parts where it's like, I don't know, I was messing around and it's like I came up with this thing and my writing just basically cleaned up that thing that I came up with.
Right. Right. And let me ask you this, actually, when you write like that, like, because like for me, I try to identify the emotional color that like I'm going for first. Like if I write in that way that you're talking about, like where like it's like I'm just fooling around. Like not fooling around mindlessly, but fooling around with intent, if that makes any sense, right? So you're fooling around with intent, or you're just improvising with intent. But I try to sit there with like, okay, well, I'm gonna go for anxiety, or I'm gonna go for joy, which is very hard for me, by the way. This is a very difficult one for me to write. But yeah, like, I'm going for joy, or I'm going for grief, or I'm going for hatred, or I'm going for, something like this, that's like the color. And then I'll like play in that way.
Yeah, for me, it's usually anger. That's usually the emotion I'm trying to tap into. I have access to the other ones, but for some reason, they don't really inspire me to write.
American males.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding.
Talking about the concerto, let's go ahead and pivot to that for a second.
Well, you don't want to have a whole hour about like, toxic American masculinity and how like everything, we're like suppressing everything, and how I have to like think about like Queen Elizabeth getting kicked in the crotch every time I have like anything resembling like a sensitive emotion, or like, anything resembling like a warm feeling, or any kind of like vulnerability. Like I have to think of like, I have to think of like somebody, that Queen Elizabeth getting kicked in the crotch. That's like how I start laughing. And then that's how I just.
You got to tamp it down. Yeah. Now I'm going to have to go write something angry again.
But yes, let's talk about the concerto. That would be amazing.
So you wrote this concerto for Rachel, and it is called
Dependent Arising.
And where did that come from?
So, in some ways, it's actually the opposite of what I was just kind of like, kind of saying. Like the understanding. It's a Buddhist concept. It's all these. The whole title, the whole concept comes from Buddhist eschatology, and it basically is that nothing is independent of itself. Nothing comes from its own side. Like, you know, our identities, our very being, nothing, it would not have come into play. For example, like, you know, this phone or whatever. How does how did this phone happen? Right? Like, how many people were responsible? Think about like the thousands of people in China in a factory that made this phone, and then think of, you know, like, so nothing is independent. And you think, oh well, the phone is the phone. It's sitting here in my on my desk, you know, but it was not. It didn't happen by itself, and we didn't. Nothing in the universe happens by itself. So that's the meaning of dependent arising. Nothing, that everything is dependent on everything else.
Awesome. Raz is here. What's happening, Raz?
What's up, Raz?
She had a question, and I guess I'll move this over. I'll put this on top of me. That's better. And she asked, are you capturing, when you're writing, are you capturing live audio and then MIDI transposing into Sibelius? Or are you recording and then just painstakingly breaking it down later? What is your process for doing that?
Thanks. What a great question, Raz. So I think it depends. There's no one answer, right? So like so sometimes it'll be like when I consciously have a chance to get down here into my office and write, I'll turn on Logic and I'll have this microphone on and I'll like play a bunch of stuff and then I'll mine it. Like I'll do like maybe like 5 minutes worth of stuff or whatever, and then I'll just mine it and kind of like pick what I like and throw out what I don't, and then go into Sibelius and then craft it from there. Like, oh, that was just me improving and that wasn't very, you know, we can tighten this. We can, like, there's a lot of tightening in post involved. Sometimes, I've actually been known, you know, Jenny has laughed at me many times where I'm like walking down the street and like I think of a riff and then I'll pull out the phone and go to the voice memo and then just kind of like and do that. So
I'm so glad I'm not the only one who like has a zillion voice memos of this unintelligible nonsense that I'm going to use later.
Right. So there's a fair amount of time also that I sit there and just kind of like listen to the voice memos and then transcribe it into Sibelius, or like, you know, a lot of times when I'm doing the voice memos and it's like in the middle of the street, for whatever reason, I do, but not often. I don't often think in melodic ways, which maybe is obvious for anybody who's heard any of my stuff. But but yeah, no, but I'm definitely thinking of rhythmic cells, and you know, like it'll be toneless, right? Because it's just me going, you know, like that, and then I'll go home, and then like when I go through it the next morning or whatever, then some of the process is just, you know, assigning pitches, like, you know, kind of getting, you know, on the keyboard here or on my violin and kind of like trying to figure out cool harmonies that go along with it.
So did she commission this concerto from top down? Was this an idea that you had that you kind of brought to her? How did all that go down?
This is all stemming from failure on my part. So I had written Rachel cold called me because she knew of my my metal band. I had a straight up like metalcore band before Seven Sons called Resolution 15, and I'm looking at myself there and see that there's a sticker next to, where is that, next to Never Gonna Give You Up. See, I have a record of Rick Astley over there, and I made it, I put my sticker on his album. So I had a metalcore band, and Rachel was a fan, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But she cold called me because she's already friends with a mutual friend of ours, this dude Chuck Bontrager, which we all know. What's up, Chuck? Wherever
Chuck?
you are. And she cold called me and asked me to write her a solo violin work, like Ysaÿe or Bach, you know, like like a sort of like a solo, just standalone piece, which wasn't necessarily that much out of my wheelhouse, right? Like, because you know, I went to school for violin. I'm actually a violinist. So that wasn't so hard. Not I take that back. It was hard, but it wasn't like, what are you, crazy? Kind of a thing. And then she played it, and then Tito Muñoz, my buddy, but also the conductor at Phoenix, heard her play my solo piece that I had written for her. And then he initially said to me, Earl, I'd like you to write like a 10 to 12 minute sort of symphonic tone poem, one movement symphonic work. And since I had spent most of my college, uh, you know, doing bong hits, uh, you know, not in class, I definitely did not pay attention in composition or theory. So I absolutely failed. Like, I couldn't figure it out. Like, I tried writing, like I don't know what an oboe does. I don't know what a bassoon does. I don't know what any of that stuff does. So I went back to Tito. I'm like, yo, I can't. Yeah. That's what it does, right?
That's
So
what I got.
anyway,
Yeah.
so I went back to Tito. I'm like, yo, I failed, man. I can't write a symphonic poem, man. What are you talking about? I can't do any of this stuff. So but then I thought about that. He thought about it, and he goes, why don't you maybe take a springboard and, springboard from the idea of a concerto? Because then initially the idea was just like, well, I can write for violin, right? And then if it's a concerto and it's just, Rachel doing the heavy lifting, then, whatever, the oboe couldn't, who cares what the oboe does? It just, that's it, right? Great. Call it a day. Cut, print, go home. The thing is, the most hilarious thing is that if you listen to the concerto, that's definitely, the orchestra has a lot of hard stuff going. It's not like, so, my initial like laziness, like that didn't really work out either. But what ended up happening? So that's how it happened. It was supposed to be a symphonic work. I was afraid to figure it out. I told Tito, he says, why don't you write a concerto? Rachel was willing to play it. And then once that assignment came down the pipe, what I did was I went to the library and I took out like all these scores. I took out the scores of music that like I really loved. I took out Debussy's La Mer. I took out Rite of Spring. I took out Ravel and Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition. Um, you know, couple of I took Beethoven 3 Eroica out. I took, a bunch of scores out where I could like see what an orchestra actually does. And then like I spent like a month just like deeply listening and studying scores and like digging out old theory books and trying to like, oh, that's fifth species counterpoint. Oh, I see. Don't have parallel fifths, which I broke, by the way, because parallel fifths are all over my piece, all over. Just the whole thing is parallel fifths, but at least I knew I was breaking rules. So, that's how it happened. That's the path of the concerto. So it's a lot of people putting trust in me where maybe that was a risk.
You proved them right.
But yeah, I like to think I like it. Parts anyway.
So tell people where they can find this, because it's been come out to rave reviews from both the classical and the metal community.
So the concerto is out on Sede Records, which is a really great Chicago-based record label, and it's mostly, I'm not a Chicagoan, but Rachel is, and they are a huge advocate for arts in Chicago-based arts. So that album is available wherever you get your albums, the whole Spotify, but screw Spotify. Just you should buy the CD from actually the website or or I don't know. You should actually buy it, because Rachel gets and Sadie, they actually get the money instead of like streaming. That's great if you want to stream it on, because that's the only way you get it. Great, whatever. But like, just know that she only gets like literally 0.3 cents.
It's 0.3 cents per stream. You would have to listen to that thing 300 times for her to get $1.
Right.
And if you listen to it 300 times, you're going to need therapy.
Right. So there's that. Yeah, I mean, maybe maybe you need therapy just listening to it once. I don't know. But yeah, no, and also the Seven Sons album is also out through Silent Pendulum Records, which is a metal label, and it's also on Bandcamp. Bandcamp used to be awesome, but I think they just got bought out.
They did.
By,
they got bought out by Epic Gaming, which is right here in North Carolina, and then Epic Gaming took a crap on the whole thing, and now it's going away.
Right. So
very sad.
Try to buy if you're into it. If you're into it, I would love it if you bought it. I would, and it's not. Thank you for if you're streaming it. I mean, hey, shit, thank you. But it means it helps artists, not just me or like whatever, but it helps everybody else way more if you actually buy the album itself.
Yeah, and people are afraid to say that because it sounds self-serving. But okay, I'll be self-serving. I'm trying to pay my bills over here.
Yeah, no. I never felt that way. Please buy my stuff.
So I think I remember talking to you at one point early in the composition process for this, that you'd said, if I did nothing but practice this concerto for the next 10 years, I could play it like poorly and at half speed. Yeah. And Rachel had the score for like 24 hours and came to your house and more or less just played it. That's correct.
That's how awesome Rachel is. I mean, it's not, nobody's doing anybody a favor by calling her a legend. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like we're being nice. It's just a fact.
Yeah, we're just being honest.
That's really all it is. Although I'll tell you a funny story. I'll tell the live stream community a funny story. After the recording in Scotland, and we were done, the very last thing, and it was all over, and it was committed to tape, and I ran down from the control booth, and I gave her a warm hug, and she whispered in my ear, "Fuck you." And I loved it. It was I'll also leaven it by saying she had the biggest grin on her face also, and it was definitely a warm hug. It wasn't like I'm going to kill you hug. It was, but it was definitely, you get it. That thing's a handful. It is a handful, but it was written because it's not written. I want to also clarify that it's not hard just to be hard. I've always hated music like this, actually, and that's why I'm actually a little bit different from some of our friends in the sense I'm actually not a prog rock fan. I generally can't stand prog rock, mostly, because it's like, to me, it's like, wait, how? I've already cursed. How much cursing are you allowed to do on this live stream here? Are there families, little children going on here? There aren't little children. So, I heard the band Dragon Force. I remember, I'll never forget it, right? And I actually, the first time I heard them, I laughed out loud, like in the car, all by myself, like an idiot, laughing out loud, because the visual I got was like a skyscraper of dicks just like jizzing into the sky. That's all it is. That's all. It's like all dudes all the time, just jizzing for no reason. None. It was like, that was it. That's Dragon Force to me.
You very famously do not like soloing, like taking improv solos.
No, I hate it.
Yeah, so see, I'm a little older than you. I grew up during the Guitar God era of like Van Halen and all that, and like I was devastated when Nirvana hit the radio. Well, for one reason, I love Nirvana, but I was kind of devastated when it became immediately apparent the guitar solos were gone. They were done. They were passé. For 10 years, there wasn't a guitar solo on the radio. And right. I didn't like that.
Well, no, that's not entirely true. You know who was awesome at soloing? And I love his soloing, actually. Kim Thale. Soundgarden's Kim Thale was a big solo guy, but like he took solos. But I think for me, I just want them tasteful, man. Like I don't like Yngwie. I don't like I actually like Van Halen because I think his solos are very musical.
Well, he's got stuff to say. Some of these guys talk a lot and don't say anything.
That's what I'm saying. like Dimebag, right? Pantera, every note was gold. Every note, beautiful, all of it beautiful, right? Not a note was wasted, right? I think, but you get a guy like Yngwie or even like Steve Vai or like whatever. I'm just not into these guys because it's just like a bunch of like this, And so my point was that the concerto was difficult because it was conveying a certain. I think I was trying to convey a certain emotional affect and a certain kind of like feeling that could only be like expressed in this kind of like on the edge sort of a way. So I
Yeah, it
think
doesn't peel out for the sake of peeling out.
right. Like it's say at least I hope it is. Like it's I'm doing it for this reason. And that's a lot of the bands that I like and love are or music that I love kind of like is that in that way. Like a Bartok string quartet. Fiendishly difficult, right? But like I think it really earns it. Like when you play I remember playing Bartok 2 and having a real hard time of it. Like not, it was very difficult, but the musical payoff was just so there that that it was all worth it to me.
Yeah, anybody can write something that nobody can play. Anybody could do that.
Right.
It's writing something that's hard to play, but it's hard to play because that's the only way to say the thing you're trying to say. That's hard.
That's what I'm. That's it. That's the kind of thing that I feel is important for me to express. Like I even I'll tell I went to see I have a bunch of good friends in in Alarm Will Sound. I have a bunch of good friends in Alarm Will Sound. This sort of the group, and I remember being actually viscerally angry at one of the pieces they played, and they were all laughing at me when I told them after, because like it was so fiendishly difficult, this piece that they played, and you can tell that all the musicians were so good, so good, and it was in the service of a piece that was just so useless it was just so ironic and intellectual, and so like everybody knows that it's hard, and I could see in my mind's eye, I could see the notation, and it was like a bar of 1765 plus 5492.
Yeah, somebody's just trying to be clever.
Right. And because these musicians are so good, and they did it, and it was just like amazing, but then it made me mad because it was almost like you're wasting all of this skill in a way.
It's like tongue
But that's just
twisters. Like that thing is really hard to say, but it's not saying anything. See, she
right.
sells seashells by the, like what that was pointless. Why'd you say that? There was no
That's
reason
right.
to say that.
That's
Other
right.
than that it's hard to say.
It's hard, right. But I also have a feeling that you and I, speaking of toxic American males, I feel like we're edging real close into the get off my lawn territory. If we haven't gone there already.
Old man yells at cloud. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's where we're at right now. At least that's where I am. I've got my knee-high socks here.
Yeah. I don't care how hard it is to say, fine. If it's hard to play, that's great. As long as it's saying something that needs to be said.
100%. That's actually,
How about this? Where do we go to buy the new album? I know we've said, but we've got some turnover in the audience, so make sure people know.
Which new album? So both albums. So the Rachel Barton Pine album, Dependent to Rising, is available from Sade Records, and that's available from, I think it's on the Sade Records website, and it's also available on Apple.
Yeah, you can buy Apple, Amazon, Google Play, all the places that you buy music. You can buy that one.
All the platforms. And the Seven Sons album, One of Us is the Killer, is available. The best place to buy it is Silent Pendulum Records, and we have a dedicated page on Silent Pendulum. That website, I'm going to pull it up right now because I am at a computer. Silent Pendulum Records is. Can you? You can only screenshot. I can't screenshot.
Here, I just put it in the comments.
SilentPendulumRecords.com/collections /Seven Sons.
So there it is.
So that is the best place to buy it. And
So
we're gonna
that's
have
on
a
there.
show. Actually, oh, I should say this, right?
Yeah,
So for
yeah.
those of you in New York City on November 7th, Seven Sons is going to be playing at St. Vitus in Greenpoint, which is pretty well known. It's it's a metal bar. And we're going to be doing our record release party there, and we will have swag on hand. So, and we would love it, whoever is in New York, to come and check it out. We've all worked really, the guys of, yeah, Ada and Chernhui and Jenny, and well, me too, but we've worked like a lot on it, and we're really we would love to share it with as many people as possible. So, please come on out and see it.
I have a question here. Who are your main inspirations and then favorite bands and composers? And strap in. This is going to be a really eclectic list, I have a feeling.
Let's see. On the classical side, I think if I had to, I was just saying this to Jenny, if I had to like actually whittle it down, right? Really whittle it down, I would probably only take Bach with me, right? Which is unlike anything I ever write ever. But it's really, if I was forced to only pick one, it would be Bach, right? But yeah, I like all the sort of, dead mainstream white guys. But I also really, like in particular, two friends of mine that are doing stuff right now. I really love Jesse Montgomery, and I really like Curtis Stewart. His album Of Love is out now too, and that's pretty badass. It's about his mom, and him processing his grief with his mom passing away. So that's a pretty great album. On the classical side. Let's see, metal. Metal. I grew up with the big four, so that's Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth. But I also was really into, and like there's all the sort of not as well known thrash bands too. Creator, Flotsam and Jetsam, Exodus, all that stuff. But there's also the I had a big punk streak too. Like I love Bad Brains, Minor Threat, Rite of Spring. I even like some of the emo stuff like Sunny Day Real Estate, and obviously then going into the metalcore. There's a lot of stuff. There's a long list. I should stop, but Lamb of God, Killswitch, Blood Has Been Shed was a huge influence on me. Actually, Blood Has Been Shed, giant influence. Of course, Dillinger, Botch, Every Time I Die, Meshuggah. Can't forget about Meshuggah, and Candiria, super eclectic band out of New York, in the hardcore scene, but they did way more than just hardcore. Also, Candiria, they're brilliant. So yeah, those are in a nutshell. I like some jazz too and hip hop, but like that doesn't really inform me artistically, I guess. I like Wu-Tang, Nas, a lot of the boom bap, KRS-One. I love KRS-One.
You got to be a closet Swiftie though.
I respect her. I really like what she's doing. I really love that she's like re-recording her old albums because fuck you labels. I love that. And I kind of love how she's sort of taken the piss out of kind of secretly the sort of whole, patriarchy kind of thing. I think it's great. Does her writing appeal to me personally? Do I listen to it when if I'm going pop, I would I'll definitely go with Doja Cat way faster than Taylor Swift.
You're not really her target audience.
No, I stand Doja Cat though, pretty hardcore. I would yeah. I heart her for sure.
We did get a question way back a few minutes ago when you were talking about parallel fifths. Why not parallel fifths? And, it's that old music theory thing from Baroque and classical music. You can't do parallel fifths and you don't do parallel octaves. And for the most part, they didn't make that rule for the sake of making rules. They made that rule because most of the time when you write that way, it sounds bad.
Right. That's exactly right. Like, the thing is, though, it's called, they consider it poor voice leading, but it's all contextual. It's like, in what space are you writing, and what are you trying to achieve? Like, if you're trying to have uniformly interesting polyphonic voices like Bach, you generally don't want parallel fifths. That's actually true. But in the style that I was writing in, it's all parallel fifths because it actually sounds disjunct. It doesn't sound like stitched together nicely. And for me, that's kind of the point.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, those are the sounds that they were trying to avoid and the sounds that we're trying to get.
That's exactly right.
Right. Question
Matt,
here
I actually have to go. I have to pick up my child.
Oh, okay. I will throw this question up. Did you find it difficult at first to play metal on violin? And then maybe if you have a chance to throw that in an answer to that in the comments section later on, that'd be awesome.
Sure. I will answer it now. I'll answer. I have 2 minutes. So, yes, the answer is absolutely yes. I'm actually absolutely injured by teaching myself how to play metal. I in a way, I kind of wish there was somebody to show me the stuff when I was first doing it, because I hurt myself because it was a lot of tension and I didn't know how to teach myself to like release in these sort of micro moments. So it was a lot of trial and error and kind of like having the sound in front of me. And then also, like I said, I had mentioned the band Blood Has Been Shed earlier. I somewhere along the way, I became really good friends with their guitarist, a guy named Corey Unger, and him and I would sit for long periods of time, and like I would play stuff, and he would like. That's why the riffing, that I do, that's not the kind of the all that kind of stuff, where I'm not ricocheting the right. That actually comes from Corey, because we were tracking a bunch of stuff, and initially I was ricocheting all the time, which is kind of like the common sense thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I would hear the wave files back at me, it was like in my head I thought I was being super brutal and it was like this clean attack. But then when you hear it back at you through the speakers, it was suddenly super weak, super like the opposite of what we wanted. So that a lot of that development came through, in a way, kind of being around like the real the artists doing this music for real. You know what I mean? Like hanging out with Corey, hanging out with Ben, hanging out with Tumas, from Meshuggah, just kind of like hanging around these guys and, having that sound in front of me as almost kind of like a North Star, and then like kind of tailoring my technique to kind of fit the sound.
All right, man, we're going to let you go pick up your daughter, but thanks so much for hanging. And man, everybody go buy the Rachel record, go buy the Seven Sons record. They're fantastic, really advancing the field of violin. One of these days we'll get you to plug in. And
I wish he wasn't so tight. First of all, Matt, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Really, thank you. If we had another thing, of course I have. I mean, I have the thing here. I would go. I just.
Yeah, these projects just happen to be acoustic, but they're amazing and they're worth talking about. So we're talking about them.
Thank you. Yeah, Yeah. So I'm gonna run pick up my kid.
Yep. Tell Jenny I said hi.
I will. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you,
All right.
Matt.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.